Lieberman's death, but also his life, his career, as Scripps News political analyst Steve Schmidt, who knew him well. Steve, you ran the 2008 campaign where John McCain wanted to choose Joe Lieberman as his running mate instead of Sarah Palin. He later said he regretted that. Can you tell us about that?
I can. It was my suggestion to Senator McCain. It was something that came very, very close to happening. The concept was that John McCain would go out to the country and the speech he would give looked something like this. He would say that I'm 72 years old. I've spent my entire life, every hour of it, in service to my country since I was 18, in uniform and in public service. And I've asked a member of the Democratic Party, a great American, my friend, to join me to solve this country's three biggest problems. And he would have enumerated them to bring the country back together. And an important part of that was that he would have pledged to serve one term. At that time, John McCain was 72. He was the oldest nominee in the history of the country. Now, the Republican Party of that era was different than it was today, but it was faithful to the pro-life cause, and Senator Lieberman was not pro-life, he was pro-choice. And so the only way to do this was to jam it through at the convention. It needed to be held as a secret, and Lindsey Graham, the other part of that trio, leaked the fact that he was under such serious consideration to a group of conservative activists, and it became public, and the possibility of it ever happening came to naught. But I often wonder about the world we would have lived in if John McCain had given an approximation of that and had said that, I think that Senator Obama is a fine man who will be president one day. I just don't think he's ready yet. I wonder what the impact would have been, particularly with the one-term pledge.
And Steve,
but Joe Lieberman was a significant figure, first Jewish candidate to be on the national ticket of the Democratic Party, and again, very close on the Republican Party as well.
John McCain didn't pick him in 2008. Your campaign didn't pick him in 2008, but he still received that prominent speaking role at the convention in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I just, if you can take me back to that, I mean, this is 2008. 8 years ago, this was the guy who was the Democrats' vice presidential nominee, and you guys were able to score him, if you will, to speak on McCain's behalf at the biggest political event of the year, traditionally, the RNC. Walk me through that moment and that speech in which he said things like country matters over party and spoke so kindly of John McCain.
Well, he meant it. And I say that as somebody who's not trying to validate that his feeling was correct, just to say that he was a man of conviction. During the Clinton impeachment and that scandal, he was the Democratic senator who famously spoke out and talked about President Clinton's misconduct in a very searing way. By the time you get to the McCain campaign, the most unpopular political issue in the country by far was the Iraq War. And so no matter how it began, there were so many people by that point who had supported it, but had walked away from it. And Joe Lieberman had a real sensibility that he shared along with John McCain, that no matter how we got into it, the only way out was through. And his conviction about that and his unwillingness to back down from that bonded those two men. In McCain's case, it was the fuel that led to his political comeback. As it turns out, people weren't so interested in the popularity of the issue, but the convictions and the character and the content of that character. So it was a different time. It was a different era. But that's how Joe Lieberman wound up on that stage. It was because he believed in that moment in what he was saying for a man of the opposite party that he very deeply respected.
Yeah, and he was a prominent national figure for decades. I was just a lowly House staffer, but he was known to be tough. He didn't bend publicly, did not yield privately, and he stuck to his guns. Scripps News political analyst Steve Schmidt, we appreciate your unique insight tonight. Thanks.
Yeah, phenomenal perspective. Still ahead.